Joining us now on a Hoops 360 is the legendary, the one, the only Ari Chambers. You can find her talking about women's basketball and women's sports as a whole for ESPN and Anscape. She is also the brain power behind Highlight Her, which you can now find on social media at BRW Sports. Ari, appreciate you for joining us today. It's so great to get the insight from somebody that is as plugged into the women's sports landscape as you are.
Oh, thank you for having me, girl. This is going to be
Yeah.
great.
It's gonna be a blast. We're so happy to have you. But I want to start with the latest that we have heard on the WNBA CBA that has been pushed back yet again. The WNBA and the WNBPA have agreed to extend the current collective bargaining agreement through January 9th, and they will continue to negotiate the current or the next CBA. Your initial impressions of the negotiations that have been ongoing over the last several months and the latest decision to extend the current CBA.
Yeah, so the 40-day delay I thought would be probably like a week or so, but shows that there's a concerted effort to get it right. It's better to get it right than to get it fast, especially when it's a monumental CBA like it is right now, because women's sports is growing at a rapid rate. The players themselves are aware of what they want their demands to be. This is the first time Negley told me, she's president of the WPA. She told me that this is the first time that they have a strong foundation that they're unwilling to bend in ways of the past. And so they're coming in with their demands, and until their demands are met or until they can come up with a compromise, there's going to be less of a willingness to give in the ways that they have in the past. Now, the WNBA side, the ownership side is saying like, hey, we need something that's sustainable for long term. So I think that one of the prime reasons for pushback is the sustainability viewpoints on both ends. So the players are like, we want this specific revenue share, but the economics of what the league is trying to communicate probably doesn't lend itself to the exact number that the players want. And in a collective bargaining agreement, it's a bargain, right? So it's something that they're going to have to come together and see what's best for the longevity of the league, as well as what serves the players and their popularity right now.
We've heard a lot from players all season about having that leverage that they haven't had in the past. One thing that sometimes comes into these negotiations is having mediation or a mediator there, a third party, to kind of talk about both sides and come to that agreement you're talking about. Do you feel like that's something that would work in this case?
I think that perspective is everything, and you have one side that is a little bit more hesitant to relinquish. They're a little bit more hesitant because of what historically the economics have been with women's sports, whereas you have the other side, which is the players who are saying, "Hey, this is what we deserve. This is what we want," and the numbers back them right now. A third party could help, and I'm not in the room with them, so I don't necessarily. I'm not privy to if there has been a third party, but mediation is a great way to do it. Kathy typically serves as the voice of the ownership, the other side of it, and she's kind of playing in the middle to make sure the parties are happy. But we've seen historically that there has been some pushback to the communication between the commissioner and several players. They've been outspoken of that. So not only are they dealing with the collective bargaining agreement, but they're also dealing with just remedying the communicative dissonance of it all.
Yeah, and you bring up a very fair point that you wanted to get it done right, not necessarily fast. And I think I'm 100% agreement with you that this is probably the most pivotal moment in the WNBA's history. Get it right and make sure that both parties are happy. With
Mm-hmm.
that being said, we do have two expansion teams that are going to be going through an expansion draft. There is at least some sort of a maybe not hard and fast deadline, but there's still a calendar that we have to pay attention to for the next year of the next season of the WNBA. WNBA players, they have other leagues that they can play in. They have other forms, maybe not every player, but several players have other forms of income, whether that's other leagues, endorsement deals, so on and so forth. So, do you feel like there's one side that's pushing this along maybe more than others? Maybe there's one side, whether it's the league or the players, that feels like they need to get this done sooner than the other?
So when it comes to the other leagues, it doesn't have to be an either or, right? So all the other leagues that exist in tandem with the WNBA are in tandem with the WNBA, right? So Unrivaled's premise is the top players of the WNBA. And so I think there's a misstep or misleading language surrounding the competition of it all, because Unrivaled, great league that's about what, 5 weeks to 8 weeks, I think. And it pays a substantial amount. You have Project B coming up next year, which would be November through April. You have Athletes Unlimited, who has set the standard for the off-season play for players, right? So all of these can exist within the WNBA. The players are the product. They're what brings the eyes to it, but also the basketball is the vehicle for that. And the WNBA is the longest standing women's sports league in the United States, and you can't discredit them. It's a bad faith to not acknowledge the WNBA, the league part of it all, right? They work in tandem, and I think that the togetherness of it all has been absent in conversation with a lot of talking heads when you speak about it. But they're mutually beneficial. They benefit each other. They work hand in hand, and one without the other would be a horrible misstep. So, in my opinion, I believe that they can come to a common ground so that the players will feel valued. I feel like there's going to be a common ground where the investors and the ownership can feel like they are continuing to make smart business decisions, but it's going to take a willingness on both sides to hear out everything. And I think that's why you see such a concerted effort in like prolonging the conversation, so you don't rush into something that you're unhappy with on either end.
I agree. Like they are mutually beneficial to each other. You hear this from players. Isabel Harrison talked to me a couple weeks ago about this. She's been very open about how, they need some place to play in the off season. They need the marketability, all of these things. How, we all have like different ways we see it, but like how do you see this moving forward? Because one of the things you kind of alluded to is owners are going to want prioritization and potentially continue to push that forward. That's kind of like their bit. How do you see the future going? Because Project B will overlap with Unrivaled, right? There are going to be players who maybe take step back from other leagues, which they should, if that's what
Yeah,
they want.
I totally agree with you. I think that when it comes to the off-season leagues, let's say WNBA, like, let's speak on the perspective of WNBA being the main thing, right? The off-season leagues between Athletes Unlimited, Unrivaled, and Project B, you have to choose one or the other when it comes to the off-season leagues. Now with the WNBA, I still think that that's the rock that holds it all together. But if I'm the WNBA and you're saying you want this percentage of rev share, you want to be $1 million players, which I think that their value is that, then you have to be healthy for the season that they're paying you this money, right? So like if you're hurting your body by playing year-round play, which was the initial argument, well, we don't want to have to go year-round, but then tying yourself contractually to these other leagues that are causing you to be year-round, there's conversation to be had there, right? So like if I'm the league, I'm looking at them saying, hey, if this is what we're going to pay you, there has to be some give on your end with prioritization, right? And so that's still probably the sticky thing that they're talking through, but they, to me, are worth the money that they're requesting. They're actually pushing more for rev share. And I'm not an economist, but whatever the economic model is to have sustainable investment, I feel like they should lean into, so that it creates longevity for the entire league, and so that there will be a league five years from now, and that the ownership can understand that I think the minimum right now is $250 million for a team. So the ownership will get a return on investment, and so that they can keep a healthy environment for the players too.
The difficult thing with these negotiations, at least for me, is that I can totally see both sides. I can totally understand why the Players Association and why the league itself are fighting for the things that they're fighting for. So this might be a question that you might not have an answer to, and that's totally fine. But from everything that you have heard, everyone that you've talked to, and just your own personal opinion, how does this resolve? Like, what is the next WNBA CBA going to look like?
If I knew that, girl, then that means they know that, and they would not extend this for 40 days. I think it's still a work in progress. It's still something that they're trying to understand what their main priority is when it comes to compensation for what they are deserving of. I firmly believe that they're deserving of what they request, but also how to make sure that they can play for a long amount of time. I know that that's kind of what I just said, but as far as a resolve looks like, Swing Cash said it best, right? When she was negotiating 2016, she said, I had to do what was best for the people who are following my footsteps to set us up for success. And NECA is in the same boat with, hey, I know what we're worth now. We need to make sure that we're compensated, but going forward, we create something that will last and last. So last CBA was a lot of maternal care and a lot of housing situations. The charter flights have been remedied. The salaries have gone up. They still are going to go up. They're going to reach a threshold that we've never seen before. And it's going to be regulated in a way that other women's sports leagues that might have certain players making a certain dollar amount don't have. So all of this is good news, and we can rest easy saying that it's going to be a substantial increase from the last CBA to now, but they have to figure out what can be sustainable. I think sustainability should be key, but I am also not an athlete. But I will say that the WNBA the players have always been on the correct side of history, and they have been the martyrs or the ones on the front line to show women that they can fight for everything that they want. They can demand their worth and not settle. And I don't foresee players settling for something that doesn't make them happy. And that's beautiful. That's dope. Like, that's something that the world should aspire to be. They should aspire to be like the athletes of the WNBA, because it's the strongest united front that you'll ever find in sports, period.
Nor should they settle. They have no reason to settle. The reason the W is as valuable as it is today is because
the players,
those players.
Absolutely.
And Ari, not only do you do such a fabulous job breaking down the W, all things on and off the court, but you also do such a wonderful job covering college basketball. You are a proud NC State alum.
Go Pack!
But the ACC has been struggling a little bit.
It's a phenomena that I'm not yet. I mean, I want to bang my head on the wall. It's kind of reminiscent. Like, I don't talk about men's sports ever, but it's kind of what's going on with ACC football. We don't know what the heck is going on, period, with the ACC. But I have hope that come conference time, because of the strength of conference, they'll be battle tested for NCAAs. And obviously, you want to take it game by game. But the parity that's within women's college basketball right now is something that we haven't seen, whether that's because of NIL or whether that's because there's not. I don't know. I was in the college in my early adulthood in the days where it was like UConn and that's it.
Yeah.
And so there's so much talent spread across the entire landscape of women's basketball now that it's really anybody can take it, essentially. I mean, obviously South Carolina, the dynasty they are, UConn, the dynasty they are, LSU, the stars that they are. Like, Stanford, well, not Stanford this year. Stanford's in a rebuild, but you get it. There's so much, and I did not mean that as like a Stanford blow. I'm just saying they're in a rebuild right now and they have a great, rookie class. Anyway,
what it is.
But the point is there is parity here that we haven't seen before. And the powerhouses that used to exist are now facing tougher competition because the talent pool is spread across teams in a way that hasn't been ever.
You had mentioned the ACC conference schedule, kind of the strength of schedule, but I'm curious how strong it's going to be. We've seen chaos in the ACC the last couple of years, so it's definitely going to be a fun conference to watch because it always is. But coming up, we have the ACC SEC Challenge. I kind of view it as a good barometer of what the ACC could look like, especially after some really serious missteps. I mean, Duke has not had a good time. How are you going to watch the ACC SEC Challenge? What are you going to take out of these results?
I'm not going to watch it. I'm going to watch it alongside my good friend Lo, and we're going to place bets. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm going to watch. I look at ACC, and I said this is the league of the great guards, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some of the teams within the league have struggled to score. So offensively, I don't look at any of the strong teams in the ACC and say they lack defense particularly, right? So I'm looking how they can score against SEC. SEC to me is probably the strongest conference top to bottom with positions and teams. And so I, it's gonna be tougher than years in the past, because I think for our top teams so far within the ACC, they haven't figured out ways to hold their ground for 40 minutes offensively. And that's what troubles me. Also, post play in the ACC is not as strong as um, like a full top to bottom conference
Yeah.
of like a SEC or Big Ten or Big 12. So
And when we talk about the ACC, you can't really talk about it without talking about Hannah Hidalgo, who is quickly becoming and has become a certified star in this sport. But, Cass and I have talked about this several times since the beginning of the season that, Paige obviously now on the W, Juju Watkins sidelined with an injury. These big time premier household name women's college basketball players won't be participating this season. So we've been desperately trying to find, okay, who's that next face? Is it Lauren Betts? Is it Hannah Hidalgo? Is it flau'jae? My question to you is, does women's college basketball need a face of the sport this season?
you have your alliance with a specific college. And that's the benefit of everybody always talks about, like, why does women's college basketball marketability seem a lot more seamless than pros? It's because you marry yourself to an institution, right? You're accustomed to that. NIL is slightly changing that, obviously, because people fall in love with the superstars of the sport. But if you're looking at the entire landscape, there's so many names to follow. I'm looking at Audie Crooks, one of the most efficient players that I've ever seen, a dominant presence, and she's just been setting records left and right. That's an exciting player. And then off the court, she's a sweetheart, has her own foundation. She sings, just is great. It's just there's somebody for everybody within the league. If you're a TikTok girly, KK Arnold's going to be your girl, right? If you're into the culture, flau'jae, there's so many people to fall in love with, or just raw talent that exists in a way that's electric. And because of the visibility that women's basketball has now, it's on full display. You can just turn on the TV and see it. So do they need a face? There's so many faces to choose from. So one singular face, maybe not necessary, but they have a roster of superstars that you can fall in love with if you haven't married yourself to an institution.
Do you, I want to mention about the face of the game. I thought it was interesting. You talked about having an allegiance to a school, and that is why marketability is so easy. Just quickly, though, I do wonder how you view the future, because obviously we do have NIL transfer. You can transfer every single year. We've seen in the W, fans are latching on to their favorite players.
Mhm.
That's becoming more of a thing. So do you feel like that has or will change in the college game, where maybe, yeah, you root for UConn because you went there, but you're rooting for all these other players a little more?
Yeah, that's a good point, Cass. I grew up thinking that I was a Sparks fan. Obviously, Lisa Leslie of it all and Candace Parker of it all. But when Candace left the Sparks, I mean, I'm probably not supposed to say it biased, but like, I went to Chicago right with her. Like, that's where my fandom went, like, as a fan of the game, right? And then it went to the Aces when she played at the Aces. So I agree with the fact that it might shape shift, because one, these players aren't staying at these colleges the entire tenure of their college career. They're moving around, and there's space for you to move around with them. Obviously, like, it's personal preference whether or not you stick with one team or you vary it, but that it opens up possibility that if you did not have an allegiance to a college that is strong enough to supersede your allegiance to individual players, you can fall in love with an individual player and then follow them through college and then follow them to the pros. And these athletes are famous from literally sixth grade. Like, they're famous from sixth grade on now. So you can have a longer runway to know more about them leading up to the pros. And so that's a recipe for greatness, right? Like, I saw pictures of Paige when she was in sixth grade floating around the other day. Like, that girl's been on.
She has been on the scene. And even if you do, speaking from my own personal fandom, I have a school that I went to and a team that I root for. That doesn't stop me from falling in love with other individual players that might even
Exactly.
play on my rival teams
Exactly.
or coaches. Like, tell me that you aren't head over heels in love with Dawn Staley and everything she does and everything that she says.
I can't speak enough about Dawn Staley and her presence in my life, personally and professionally. She has always been an open door for me. And as just a big sister, as a globetrotter, like my little travel partner, as somebody who's there to encourage me and reassure me. I got her Excellence in Broadcasting Award 3 years ago, and it really put in perspective for me that the work that I was doing was good. And so, selfishly speaking, great person to have in my life, but for the landscape of women's basketball, just a legend, walking legend. You want to play for Dawn Staley. She prepares you for the pros. She is always willing to, I mean, just look at what Gamecocks call their fams. She makes you a part of her family. And people like that are a dime a dozen. She doesn't have to be so generous with her time and her wisdom and her skills and her words and just her space, but she is, and she chooses that day after day. That's why I go to bat for any, like, for her all the time. Anybody who has any bad things to say about her, I'm like, I don't know how you could formulate any type of negative thought about Dawn Staley, because she is not only a legend of the game and a pioneer of the sport of basketball, but she's an equally brilliant and excellent person. Like, she's a great human being.
So, so well said, and agree with everything that you just said. But before we let you go, Ari, because you've been so generous with your time, I do want to ask you, as somebody that's been so involved in women's sports coverage before this wave that we've experienced over the last few years, I think that part of the coverage of women's sports where we are right now is just be there, show up, tell the stories, ask the questions, interview the player. How can we be better? How can we better cover women's sports moving forward to ensure that every professional women's league has the same kind of skyrocket to fame as the WNBA and women's college basketball has?
Intentionality with storytelling, not being reliant on the bigger names. There's a great scope of stories to be told that are filtered through the lens of KPIs, and you have to meet certain quotas, but throw that out the window and you'll see, I think Together does it best right now, but throw out the entire idea of having to meet a number and tell the stories in a pure way. And you'd be shocked how willing the athletes are to open up different layers of themselves so that people can learn from the storytelling that we do. And that kind of ironically makes the bigger names trust the media even more. If you know what you're talking about and have the intentionality behind it. Now, I will say that I love that women's sports is growing, and I love that there's so many avenues for people to speak on behalf of it. But I really implore people to have a historical lens when they do talk about it. And so it's not, we live in an age where social media is so available to everybody and nobody really has to be vetted. So the information that you relay, just know the responsibility that comes with, know that the weight that holds, and people take our storytelling, our reporting as fact. So we need to be equipped and ready to deliver factual information in the most authentic and trustworthy way, and know the backstory about things. I love that we had a CBA talk. It's so nuanced, and it's not as simple as what a lot of people are saying. These other leagues aren't as simple as the WNBA sucks. That's just not the truth. If the WNBA sucks, they wouldn't be around, right? And you have to realize where we came from in order to know where we're going. And there has to be an intentionality behind looking back on it too, as much as it is as covering all the scope of players.
1000%. Ari Chambers, you are one of the absolute best. Where can the people find some more of your work?
I am on Ari Ivory everywhere. I like a universal handle. Marketing out there, guys. Pick one handle. If you can, buy it out. Anyway, or anywhere at ESPN, linear and digital.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Good luck with everything. We'll chat with you soon.
Thank you, Bookies.